Thank you for having me here today. I wanted to start off by asking all of you a question. What's the best collaborative experience you've ever had? I want you to take a minute to think about that question. It could be something personal, it could be professional, it could be with one other person, it could be with a whole bunch of people. Whatever comes to you, what's the best collaborative experience you've ever had?
Marriage.
Oh. Valid collaborative experience. It's good that it's keep them for yourself. You're actually going to say that we're going to use them. That's okay. It's getting us into the right mode. I like that. How many people have them? Raise your hand if you have a great collaborative experience. Raise your hand high. Wow, that's incredible. That's really nice to see. Keep your hands up if that experience came to you immediately. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. So fewer people were there. I want to share one of my favorite collaborative experiences. It's actually a non-work experience, and it's actually something I witnessed. It wasn't something that I was actually a part of. But actually, because of this morning, I think it might resonate pretty clearly. I have a friend who used to teach violin, and the way she taught was that she would have her beginning students play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. She would have them play endless variations of it, and that was basically how she would teach the different notes, the different fingering, and that sort of thing. And the first time I saw her teach, I remember this moment very vividly because she was teaching this 5-year-old girl. She was super serious. She had this look of concentration on her face every time she was playing. It was very cute. It wasn't that person. That's the son of one of my friends. I didn't have a picture of her, unfortunately. But my friend was having her play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star over and over and over again. And towards the end of the lesson, my friend decided to harmonize the last few bars of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I remember this so vividly because that little girl with a serious look on her face just completely lit up. She had this huge smile. You could feel the energy in the room completely shift. It was similar in a lot of ways to how I felt coming into the room this morning and listening to Lee and Drew sing and perform. It was a really beautiful thing. I feel really fortunate because I've had the good fortune of being able to experience a lot of great collaborative experiences and also witness a lot of great collaborative experiences. But that particular moment really stands out in my mind because it was so visceral, right? It's something that I think is so universal that so many people feel. When I asked this question about what is the best collaborative experience we've had, this room is actually pretty exceptional. I find that people really struggle to come up with an example, which is really sad if you think about it. But at the end of the day, I really truly believe that everyone has had that experience that I had, sitting in that room, listening to that girl sing her light up upon hearing that harmony. And I think everyone's experienced that moment where you've had sort of that harmony moment, that you've been part of something, and you're like, wow, this feels really good. And because of that, I think we all have this intuition about what great collaboration actually feels like, even if we have relatively low expectations about whether or not we're going to experience that in our work lives or in our personal lives or whatever. So given this, if this is true, I want to ask another question, which is, what would our world be like if all of our collaborative experiences were as good as our best experiences? What would your life be like? What would the world be like if everybody's experiences were that good? In a way, this is the vision of the world that's driving me. This is the thing that I've been working on for the past 15 years, trying to help groups basically improve their experiences so that we could have a society where everybody's collaborative experience is as good as that little girl's experience was when she heard that harmony. And so the question then is, okay, that's a great, hopefully inspiring vision. I hope it's something that feels like really great to all of you. The question is, how do you actually do it? How do you get there? What's the secret to high performance collaboration? And more importantly, how do you scale this? How do you make sure that this is an experience that everyone can have, not isolated to just a few people? So as I said before, I've been working in this space for about 15 years, trying to drive toward this mission. And I have the good fortune to be able to get up and to work with all these great people and work on all these great socially important projects. And I've seen some success. I've been able to work on projects where we hit our outcomes, where people have good experience. People say they learn a lot. People say they like what's been happening. And about 5 years ago, one of the things that I realized from my work looking back at the previous decade was that a lot of that success was actually really hollow. The reality of the situation was I'd come in, I'd work on people on specific projects. They would have a good experience. It would feel like the way they thought it should be. And then I would leave, and I would see that gradually people would be reverting to their old habits. That the collaborative experience, basically, it was sort of a one-time thing. It was good that they experienced it. It was good that they were able to accomplish what they accomplished, but it didn't stick. And that was problematic for me. As you can see, I was sad. That was not why I got into this business. It was a great thing to experience sort of on a regular basis. It was a great thing to be able to learn for myself how to help groups experience great collaboration. But if it didn't stick, then it wasn't going to work. And so I really sat down and I ended up leaving my company and decided I need to rethink how to approach this. What are the ways that we can get to scale when we talk about high performance collaboration? And so to help me think about this, I started with this premise that collaboration is really hard. If it wasn't hard, then all of our experiences would already be great, right? There would be no reason for it to be otherwise. And we wouldn't have gatherings where we're coming to talk about collaboration and to try and talk about that. And so if collaboration is really hard, what are other hard things that we as human beings actually accomplish all the time, and how do we do that? And so, for example, playing the violin, really, really hard. Not a natural thing at all. People don't just pick them up and start playing it. And yet that 5-year-old could do it pretty well, right? I'm sure a lot of people in this room play the violin or play other instruments. Everyone is capable of playing music, right? Even though it's really hard. What about things like learning languages, which is my personal bane? I'm terrible at learning languages. And yet everybody in this room has learned at least one language, right? And probably several more. So you all know the punchline to what I'm talking about already. It's in the title of my talk. But the commonality of all these things that are very hard is practice. Right? If you take enough time, if you practice something over and over and over again, you can get good at it. Simple, right? So if collaboration is really hard, everyone is still capable of getting good at collaboration. It just takes practice. How many people believe that? How many people think that, yeah, that sounds right? Let's just actually say it out loud. Let's just bear with me for a second, just to really drive this point home. If I practice enough, I can get good at collaboration. Just say it with me. If I practice enough, I can get good at collaboration. Okay, thank you. That was even in sync. That was very nice. So let's say for a moment that's true. It sounds kind of obvious, but it was actually kind of a revelation for me when I first experienced this and when I first came down to it. Because what I was realizing was that, okay, if that's actually the case, we don't actually do that. If I look at my past experiences where collaboration isn't very good, I didn't think it was actually because people inherently didn't have the skill or the ability or even the understanding about how to collaborate effectively. Listening to this previous talk, right, listening to all of you share all of these values that you were talking about that are important, about how we're all interrelated and about community and so forth. This is so innate to human beings in terms of that knowledge of what it means to collaborate effectively. And yet it actually ends up being really hard to do. In general, when it doesn't happen well, it's simply because we don't have enough time to practice. And so the question is, okay, let's say you believe it, that sounds fine. How much practice do you actually need to get good at collaboration? So again, I looked at other fields to try and think through this. And one of my favorite fields, especially when it comes to high performance collaboration, is team sports, basketball in particular. So let's look at professional basketball for a moment. Bear with me if you're not a basketball fan. So in professional basketball, they play, their regular season is 6 months out of the year. They play from November through April. They play 82 games in a season at 48 minutes a game, so approximately 66 hours of that 6 months is playing in a game, or performing, if you will. So if you break it down on a month-to-month basis, it's actually 11 hours a month. That's how much time professional basketball players are actually performing. That's essentially what they're paid to do. So 11 hours a month, that sounds like a pretty good work week, right? Pretty good work month. Well, of course, they're not just working 11 hours a month. The rest of the time, they're practicing. 93% of that time. They're training their bodies, they're working on fundamentals, they're practicing both individually and collectively. So that boils down to about a 9-to-1 practice to performance ratio. And I just want to point something out about performance. What I mean by performance and the way I differentiate it, performance is practice, of course, right? You're doing the work. And every time you're doing the work, you're actually getting better at it. But the distinction that I would draw between practice and performance is that when you're performing, the stakes are much higher. Your goal is to succeed, not to fail. When you practice, it doesn't matter. In fact, the expectation is that you're going to have lots of opportunities to fail because that's how you get good at something, especially when it's hard. And so, the question is, well, okay, this is professional basketball. That's what the ratio is. That doesn't necessarily have to be the ratio for all of us. But the question is, what is your ratio of practice to performance right now? I'm going to guess that for most of us, it includes me, your ratio is nowhere close to 9-to-1. In fact, your ratio is probably more like 1-to-9 or worse. And what I'm pretty confident about is that that's the wrong ratio. That's not going to help us actually get better at collaboration. And it speaks to why collaboration is such a challenge for all of us, simply because we're just not practicing. I think one of the reasons why we don't practice enough is just cultural. And again, I go back to all of these other things where practice is part of it. For some reason, in our field, when we think about collaboration, we have this very guru-centric mindset. We have this notion that if we just hired that one special person, right, or that one consultant, if we bought some magical tool, somehow that's going to make everything better, that we're going to be able to collaborate a lot more effectively. My hope is that in order for us to be successful, we need to shift that mindset. We need to go back to something that I think is so fundamental to so many other fields and basically say, you know what, we can get better at collaboration, we just need to take the time to practice more. So again, all well and good. So how do we do that? How do we create that culture? How do we actually start practicing more? Well, I'm going to throw out a couple of hypotheses. So one of them is if we had a structure that actually helped us practice more, we would do it more. And if we did it more, we would get better at collaboration. And if we experienced that, then we would actually start shifting our mindsets. And so what would that look like? Again, I looked at other fields for inspiration. And I started with this idea. It's like, let's look at the fitness field. So in personal fitness, we have this mindset. We know it already. There's a lot of different ways to get physically fit. There are a lot of great tips. There's a lot of deep knowledge about it. We could spend all of our time exploring that and exchanging those tips, and that would be valuable. And at the same time, we all understand that if we're not exercising on a regular basis, we're not going to get fit. So that market already has the culture that we're talking about. So let's look at the structures in physical fitness that actually support us in practicing. So I'm going to look at it across two axes. So the vertical axis is supply, so how much of these structures are available. And then the x-axis is cost. How much does it cost? How expensive are these things? And so here's what I mean. So one way we can learn more about how to get physically fit is we can just Google it. right? We can look it up on the internet, we can buy books, we can get magazines, that sort of thing. And all of those articles will tell you have to exercise more. They might have specific tips on how to do that. And those things are all like abundant. We can find an infinite number of those resources. And a lot of them are free or even cheap. So I'm going to put them on the upper left of the graph. If we want to invest a little bit more in our physical fitness, we might sign up for a gym, we might take a class, we might enroll in a boot camp. Those are more expensive, but they're still accessible to most of us, and so that kind of goes in the middle. And then at the high end, we've got personal fitness instructors. Personal and fitness instructors are probably the best way to get fit, because if you have someone yelling at you or whatever, and making sure that you're doing your exercise or at least holding you accountable, then you're actually going to practice. And at the same time, personal fitness instructors give you, like they have a lot of knowledge to impart. And they, of course, are the most expensive. They're at the highest end. We don't invest in personal fitness and trainers, even if we want to, just because it's out of reach and because going to the gym is probably just as good for most of us, right? So you end up with a curve that sort of looks like this. And the important thing to note about this particular curve is that we have options across the whole spectrum, both in the low end, the mid-range, and on the high end. And that the graph is basically weighted to the left, right? That we have more options on the left side than we do on the right, which makes sense, right? And of course, I mentioned before that there's already a practice paradigm. Okay, so let's think about this from the standpoint of the collaboration market, if you will. What does that ecosystem look like if you want to get better at collaboration? So similar to the personal fitness market, you've got stuff on the web, right? Everything is available on Google. So you can find stuff there. It's at the same place as the personal fitness market. You can take a one-off training. So you can go and go for a day or 2 days or 3 days and learn about something related to collaboration. There are a lot of those available. A lot of them are good. They're more expensive. If you want to pay a lot of money, you can go to business school. And business schools teach collaboration because collaboration is important. And some business schools even have you practice it, which is also important. And then at the high end, you have the equivalent of the personal fitness trainers, the consultants, the coaches, if you will. And at least on the consulting side, we have a lot of consultants. It's different from the personal fitness ecosystem in that a lot of people in this space are very reliant on consultants. Their instinct is, if I want to get better at this, I need to go hire someone to help me do it. And it's also different in that consultants in this space generally are not like personal trainers. They're not working with you side by side to help you practice. They're basically telling you what to do, which is completely different. You end up having a curve that's more like this, which is different from the personal fitness curve. You can see that we have this big gap in the middle. So there's no mid-range. There's no equivalent of a gym for collaboration that everyone can kind of sign up for and practice. And as I said before, it's a guru-centric paradigm. So I'm going to suggest that if we can somehow shift this ecosystem so that it looks a lot more like the ecosystem for personal fitness, if we could basically shift things so that we have more options in the low end, and that we actually have this gap in the middle basically filled out, that we're going to have a lot more structures that encourage us to practice, and a lot more people are going to start practicing. But at the end of the day, that culture is still important, that mindset is still important around practice. And the problem is, if we're waiting for this shift to happen before we actually start practicing more, we're going to be stuck in this cycle of paralysis, right? It's sort of this chicken and the egg problem. You have to want to practice in order to create the demand for this ecosystem to start shifting. And so how do we do that? How do we shift the ecosystem? Well, to get a little more concrete, so I've been throwing this collaboration word around, right? I've been talking about it as if it's this thing that we can all just improve and practice to get better at. The problem with that, of course, is that collaboration is not a thing, right? Collaboration is working together towards a shared goal with multiple people. And working together requires lots of different skills to be good at. And so if we sat down, you all are sitting down right now, and if we just started brainstorming, what are the skills that are going to help us get better at collaboration? I think we would converge on a shared list pretty quickly. So communication for one, right? Communication is a really important way to get better at collaboration, and listening in particular. We all know this. Another thing that we need to get better at collaboration is the ability to actually recognize power dynamics that are happening in the room, and also to understand how to navigate those power dynamics and how to shift those power dynamics. As I said before, about 5 years ago when I started going down this path, I started really exploring this. One of the things I started doing was to identify what the different muscles are, try and cluster them in muscle groups. I'm not going to go into a lot of this right now. This is on my website if you want to look at this. I'm happy to talk to you about any of this during the break. The main point I want to make is if we start getting concrete about what we're talking about when we say collaboration, what are the muscles, what are the skills we need to get better at it, we can actually start developing the exercises that help us improve. So I suspect that if you look at these lists, a lot of you actually know different exercises that will help us get better at all of these different skills. Some of you have maybe even experienced some of these exercises. I have a whole list of the workouts that I use, again, that's available on my website. And actually, as previously promised, when I'm done talking, we're going to go through the listening workout together. So you'll all experience what that's like. And then during the breakout sessions, both in the morning and afternoon, I'm going to be leading workouts on power. So if you're interested in experiencing what a workout might look like for those things, you can go to that. But again, and I really want to emphasize this, the key difference is going to a one-off, doing it one time, actually isn't what's going to help us get better. We need to have this practice-centric mindset, right? If I practice more, I will get better at collaboration. We have to target the muscles that we know are important. We have to practice them over and over and over again. That's what's actually going to help us get better. That's what's going to help us lead to an ecosystem like this. And so again, how do we do this? Well, it goes back to shifting culture. We can't wait for that ecosystem, again, to be magically created. It's something that I'm working on, something that I hope other people work on as well. Maybe people in this room are inspired to do it. We need a lot of people doing it. And shifting that culture at the end of the day starts with all of you individually. All of us can start with this premise, the one I had you all say. Let's say it again. If I practice more, I will get better at collaboration. If I practice more, I will get better at collaboration. So just say that every morning. And if you said that every morning, and if you actually walk away from this, and if you thought to yourself, how might you better integrate practice into your work, hopefully it's something that you start doing. Hopefully you start seeing the value of it. And hopefully it's something you share with others. That's basically how we start spreading the culture. So this is something I've been working on for the past 5 years. The early results are promising. I think it's still early. I'm still learning a lot from this experience. I'm still trying to refine the model and share what I'm learning from other people. I'm still trying to convince a lot of people to do it. And I think one of the most interesting things I'm learning from this process of basically working with groups, of trying to work with them completely differently, focusing on helping others practice as opposed to like doing the work with them, or sometimes in conjunction with that, is that how hard the journey actually is. And so to close my talk, I want to just share a personal story about learning something very hard myself and about how difficult that was, and about how I'm applying those lessons to this notion of practice and collaboration. As I said at the beginning of my talk, learning languages is sort of a thing for me, something I'm really bad at. So I'm ethnically Korean, and I don't speak Korean. And that's always been a sore spot for me. It's been a barrier for me from being able to connect with my culture more deeply. I haven't been able to communicate with a lot of my relatives, and even my parents to some extent. So about 6 years ago, about 5 years ago now, my mom asked me if I wanted to go to Korea with her. And I said, of course, because who wouldn't want to go to Korea? And with your mom. And I said, okay, I'm going to use this opportunity. I was in my mid-30s. I'm going to use this opportunity to finally learn Korean. And so I enrolled in my very first Korean class, and I started learning, and it was predictably frustrating. It was just hard, and I was beating myself up. I was really struggling with this. So as you might have picked up by now, I'm constantly looking at other places to see what tips I can learn, what might inspire me to learn a little bit better. And in this particular case, I was really lucky because my older sister had just had her second son. This is my nephew. He's now 6 years old. And, you can see he's low energy and shy. And so he was about 1 year old when I was taking these Korean classes. So he was learning how to speak English, and I was learning how to speak Korean. So we were learning languages at the same time. And babies, as it turns out, are really good at learning languages. So I thought, okay, I'm going to watch Benjamin, and I'm going to see what he does, and I'm going to see if I'm going to pick up any tips that will help me learn Korean. So you didn't have to twist my arm. I had fun watching Benjamin and studying his every move. And I picked up 2 things. So number 1, Benjamin really sucked at speaking English. He was terrible. He had a really small vocabulary. When he put words together, his grammar was terrible. He was really bad at English. And yet, despite how bad he was, he didn't care. And not only did he not care, none of us cared. In fact, every time he said a word, or in fact, every time he strung something together, we would all, wow. We would celebrate, we would applaud, we would coo. It was like a big party just to hear him try to speak English. And he responded to that. For Benjamin, learning a language was a joyful experience, not one where he was actually beating himself up. And Benjamin, I don't think, we didn't talk about this, but I don't think he expected to be fluent in English right off the bat, right? And none of us expected him to be fluent in English right off the bat. So here I was, a couple of weeks into my Korean class. I wasn't even immersed in the language, right? I'm taking like a class like once a week. I'm trying to study on my own. And I'm like, oh, I should be fluent right now, right? Beating myself up for all of these different things. It's just this really funny thing. And it was sort of an epiphany for me realizing this because I was applying it to other things and I was thinking about the collaboration space. Again, collaboration is really hard. And we come to conferences like this and you hear speakers, come up and you're hoping to hear, the secret to collaboration. And a lot of times these speakers will come up and say things that you already know, right, are true. But maybe they say it in a way that, that sounds insightful. I don't know. And so we go back to our groups and we say, okay, now we know how to get better at it. And maybe we try a few things, and maybe there's a little bit of improvement, but it's not like that experience of hearing that little girl hearing the harmony. And so we say, wow, what's going on here? The question I wanted to leave all of you with is, what if we didn't do that? What if we just acknowledge that collaboration is hard? That we don't know a lot about it, that we're not all starting from scratch. But it takes a long time to get good at it. And if we just set our expectations realistically, and if we said, we're just going to practice, and we're going to continue to get better, and we're going to suck at it initially, but when we do something well, we're going to celebrate it, and we're going to laugh, and we're going to be joyful about it. What would that learning experience like? How would that shift things? I really think that if we approach things that way, if we embrace practice as a form of getting better at collaboration, then we would actually start seeing the results shift. I think we can achieve a fluency around collaboration in the same way that we have fluency around language. And so I want you to imagine that. What would our lives be like if all of us were fluent in collaboration? Thank you very much.